their stay at Barrymore's tonight, and I love the album. The one reason is that I'm a big pop fan, and this album seems to exemplify the really clean, crisp British pop sound. Is that basically what you were after?
Definitely, yeah. We've always believed in our songwriting abilities, and we've got no big message lyrically to put across. We just always the driver's machine has been towards the melody and to getting on stage 3-minute wonders, like the old Kinks and the Beatles did. And that's always been our one priority, and I think it works great on the album.
It seems the British pop sound is very clean, very crisp, very youthful compared to the American pop sound. Mac, maybe you could compare the two different styles, and maybe who influenced you?
Personal influences in music. There's a good one.
Or who you liked and put on your turntable back when you were a teenager.
Because I could never say so-and-so influenced me. I could only say I went out and bought that record and that record. Beatles to start with, as opposed to the Stones, although I like the Stones. I think people either go one way or the other, or used to. And I went towards the Beatles.
And you went the other.
And that was after I met you. Oh! And then, yes, they were the next band that I went gaga over. I thought, gaga, when I heard them. Because I heard this band with melodies, the Beatles had, and yet it was sort of big sound, exciting rock. But since then, Vera Lynn, Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett.
Eclectic.
Yeah. Anything with a glockenspiel in it, really.
Well, the Cream had one, I remember. But Nick, what was the first record? Do you remember the first record you bought as a kid?
Yeah, I'll sing it now. When I'm feeling blue, all I have to do is take a look at you. Groovy Kind of Love by the Mime Benders.
Oh, that was a classic.
I used to mime to everybody tells this story, but it really happens. You mime with your plastic guitar to your mum.
I had a tennis racket.
I've still got one, by the way. Fender.
Always going out of tune, that was.
Breaking strings left and right.
Terrible.
How about the American pop sound? What do you think of that? Or is it just really derivative of what happened in Britain back in the mid-60s, early 60s?
Well, since we've been out here in Canada, you must appreciate the radio formats are very different from home. And although I hear a lot of damn good stuff on the radio, I just hate this programming where you do get the big heavy metal stations. Anything after 6 o'clock at night has to have the obligatory 10-minute guitar solo in it. That sort of thing. I know that's not true of every station, but I'm not really into that. But some of the American stuff is great. I just feel that I'm proud to be English. I really feel that when let's say you've heard 5 West Coast American bands, and very good West Coast American bands, beautiful production, then you just get one little English band in there. I don't know, it's just like a breath of fresh air.
There seems to be more individuality, I think, generally speaking, in what comes out of England. Always seems to be the home of inventive stuff. Not always good, I hate to add.
Yeah. I was going to ask, why has Britain become such an incredible musical force, such a small place, compared to the US and even Canada? Why have so many of the contemporary groundbreakers...
Jogging.
Jogging?
Yeah, everybody jogs this side of the Atlantic, where we write music in England. That's what it is.
Logical explanation, I suppose.
Music to jog to.
I don't know what it is. I think it's a bit like Paris you go to for the fashions, because you always have done. So if a guy gets up with green hair and plays bagpipes and sings in Dutch and comes from the London music scene, he's going to have more chance of being respected than he is if he comes from Saskatoon, isn't he? You see what I'm saying? Even though that's a ridiculous example.
Yeah, I do.
So it's always been the place where people look for odd sounds. Now, the Drivers definitely aren't innovative, but you see us on stage and you see the whole effect of what we're putting across makes us very different from what is coming out of England, and hence we get a lot of press and attention because we are not synthesizers, we are not Devo. We just get on stage and do our honest act.
Tell us about your stage show bit. How much of it is a natural type of thing? How much of it is, say, rehearsed and perfected that you've done over the last couple of years?
Most of it is just naturally, obviously, we've learnt the songs.
That's good. That's a good start.
Yeah, it is. But performance-wise, we keep it relaxed and lots of fun.
Spontaneous.
And keeping the audience sort of involved. You know, we have a few songs with audience participation, at least that's the intention.
Seems to be another British trait to have stage shows that are more spontaneous as opposed to the Styxes and Journeys where you know what the guitar solo was going to be before you hear it.
Yeah. Yeah, we found when we rehearsed to come over here, we rehearsed a definite 1 hour, 10-minute set with all the links, and I roughly know what I was going to say. We did one show like that, and there's been chaos ever since.
Yeah.
You know, every night we just get on there and do. But that's what we got going for us, you see. I mean, you know, Mac and Steve won't mind me saying this, that we're pretty good players, but there are hundreds and hundreds of players that we see in bar bands who may be technically better players than us. But what we've got going for us is sort of a...
I think what you've got to remember is the audience, and most of the audience aren't sort of music virtuosos, and they're not out to...
They won't analyse your playing.
No, but if you're putting across a message to them, all they want to have is entertainment and have a good time. And I think that's the most important thing.
Unique sound unlike everything else coming out of London these days. Guitarist Nick Van E talks about the background of the Drivers.
We've been together now as this band for nearly 3 years, I suppose. But Steve, the drummer, and myself have played in bands since we were like 11, so we go back a long way. And Mac was a session guitarist in London. He's the bass guitarist. So we formed 3 years ago, and basically just built up a really marvellous following in the London area of England, where whatever club we play in, we pack it out. But we just couldn't get anywhere. It was just a very strange situation where we'd have record companies coming along backstage, and they'd be sweating, they'd be quite drunk and have had a marvellous time at the show, and I'd say to them, well, shall we talk business? And they'd say, well, we don't really know what to do with you in England. They couldn't pigeonhole us as such. And so we got very frustrated, and up until last September, that was the story of the Drivers, just a marvellous following, but no real progression or success with record deals.
For three guys from rural Sussex who formed a band and played in London, success for some time in playing live in front of packed houses, but their real goal, the true dream of recording their first album, was an elusive one. While other new bands seemed to pop up and fade as quick as the life of a safety match, the Drivers seemed to be waiting in the wings, waiting for their chance to put together an album. Guitarist Nick Van E talks about why he thinks the wait was so long and defines what the Drivers are.
It's a case of the live act of the band is very much an honest, good time. Let's get up and have a... there's a lot of smiling, a lot of laughing. We do a couple of cover songs which are based purely on audience participation, and that's our show, and the essence of the band will always be on stage. The Shortcuts album captures the energy of the band, but in England it's not about that. It's all to do with, I hate to sound cliched on this, but it's very posy and very fashion conscious and extremely fickle, and the record companies in England are very much more into signing a band, making a damn good video, getting the hair orange and perfect, and the synthesizer sound, and then if they have that hit, bingo, they've come up trumps, but very often you'll never hear of that band again. Now personally, I'm 23, 24 now, and I want to stay in the business. I want to be in a long-term project, and that's what the Drivers is all about, staying there with good songs.
Tonight, guitarist Nick Van E talks about the band's sound and the health, or possibly lack of health, of the English record industry.
No, not one bit. I think it's as strong as ever. I think the recession, obviously, has hit everything, but it's still churning out very talented acts. It always will do. I just think that we aren't an innovative band. We won't be one of the bands that's heralded as part of the British invasion who bring new sounds to you. We are like... We've got something definitely different to offer than any other band I think I've ever seen on stage, but it's not on an innovative level. So yeah, the music business is fine, and I'm not knocking the synthesizer bands. I love Duran Duran and Spandau Ballet and Culture Club, excellent bands, but we are definitely apart from that, and so the record companies had to scratch their heads, and as far as I'm concerned, didn't have the, sounding slightly conceited here, but didn't have the foresight to see, let's just put a bit of money behind them and see how it goes. As I said, they're much more into hit-and-run projects in England. Quick single, if it doesn't work, hard luck. If it does work, see you lads.
being a British band who were discovered and signed by a Canadian to a Canadian record label. The Canadian in question is a man from Toronto by the name of Bernard Solomon, who has handled such acts as Eddie Schwartz and Aldo Nova. On the basis of a tip from a friend, Bernard flew to London to catch the Drivers in action. What he saw changed their life. Guitarist Nick Van Eede talks about that night.
As I said, we were pretty desperate. I mean, he came along at such a perfect time. I mean, 3 years together, 2.5 years together, and we were getting nowhere. And suddenly this strange little Canadian arrives and saw us in this pub where we had like a marvellous following again. And I think we just blew his mind. I mean, he hadn't really seen a band get that sort of reaction. Because, as I say, everybody knows every word to every song over in England, and it's like an incredible thing. My reaction was, sign it, sign it, sign it. Because A, it was a record deal, but B, it was another country. And I was of the opinion that we'd almost exhausted what we could do in England at that stage, because everywhere we played it was great, but we weren't getting a record deal. So it was like a double project, and before long we were in Toronto making the album in a beautiful studio. We mixed it up at Morin Heights in just north of Montreal there. So I mean, it's been like a fairy story since.